You read books. A lot of them, you underline sentences, you save quotes, you nod when people talk about philosophy, psychology, economics, or how the world really works, and yet somehow you still fall for the same tricks. You trust the wrong people, you believe convincing lies, you get manipulated by confident voices, you mistake certainty for truth, and one day, that realization hits harder than ignorance ever did. How can someone who reads so much still be so easily fooled? That question doesn't come with embarrassment at first. It comes with confusion, a quiet, uncomfortable confusion. Because reading was supposed to protect you. Knowledge was supposed to sharpen you. Books were supposed to make you see through illusions, not walk straight into them with your eyes open. But here you are, well-read, well-informed, and still deceived. The problem begins with a belief we rarely question. That reading equals understanding. We grow up hearing that knowledge is power. That intelligent people don't get fooled. That if you just read enough history, psychology, self-improvement, philosophy, you'll become immune to manipulation, smarter, safer, above the crowd. So you read about cognitive biases, you read about propaganda, you read about persuasion, fallacies, emotional manipulation. And slowly, reading becomes part of your identity. You're not just someone who reads, you're someone who knows. Someone who gets it, someone who sees what others don't. That's where the trap quietly forms, because reading gives you vocabulary before it gives you wisdom. It gives you concepts before it gives you judgment. It gives you the feeling of clarity before it gives you the discipline of doubt. You begin to recognize patterns, but not always correctly. You learn words, but not always their limits. You collect ideas, but don't always test them against reality. And without realizing it, reading becomes a shield for the ego instead of a tool for truth. There's a subtle arrogance that creeps in when you read a lot. Not loud arrogance, quiet arrogance. The kind that whispers, "I wouldn't fall for that." You start believing that manipulation only works on the uneducated. That lies only trap the uninformed. That being fooled is a sign of stupidity, not humanity. But manipulation doesn't target ignorance. It targets emotion. It targets trust. It targets hope, fear, belonging, and identity. And books, no matter how many you read, do not remove your emotions. They only give you language to explain them after they've already influenced you. That's why highly educated people still fall for scams. Why intellectuals still join cults. Why well-read individuals still defend obvious falsehoods. Because being fooled is not an intellectual failure. It's a psychological one, and psychology doesn't disappear when you turn the page. Books are patient. Reality is not. Books don't argue back. Books don't deceive you on purpose. Books don't exploit your emotional blind spots in real time. In books, ideas are clean, structured, explained slowly. In real life, ideas are messy, emotional, weaponized. A convincing liar doesn't present arguments like a textbook. They present confidence, urgency, familiarity, moral certainty. They don't ask you to analyze, they ask you to react. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Reading trains your mind, life tests your judgment. And judgment is not built by consuming information alone. Another part of the problem is that reading feels productive even when it changes. Nothing you can read about critical thinking without practicing it. You can read about manipulation without resisting it. You can read about wisdom without making wiser choices. Reading becomes a substitute for action, for skepticism, for lived experience. You feel smarter, but you don't necessarily become harder to fool. Because being hard to fool requires friction. It requires discomfort. It requires being wrong and noticing it. It requires slowing down when everything pushes you to decide quickly, and books rarely force that discipline. They invite reflection, but they don't enforce it. The turning point usually comes after a quiet betrayal, not always by others, but by your own assumptions. It might be the moment you realize you defended someone who was clearly lying. Or trusted an authority simply because they sounded intelligent. Or followed advice that felt smart but turned out disastrously wrong. And suddenly, your bookshelf doesn't comfort you anymore because you realize something painful but liberating. Reading did not fail you, your relationship. With reading did, you confused knowledge with immunity, you confused familiarity with understanding, you confused intelligence with discernment. That realization stings. But it also cracks something open. Because now you can see the missing piece. People who are hard to fool are not necessarily the most educated. They are the most aware of their emotional triggers, aware of their desire to belong, aware of how badly they want certain things to be true. They don't just ask, is this logical? They ask, why do I want to believe this? They understand that manipulation doesn't always sound stupid. It often sounds reasonable, familiar, comforting, and they know that intelligence does not cancel bias, it often rationalizes it. That's the shift from consuming ideas to interrogating reactions. From collecting knowledge to observing yourself while using it. Once you accept this, reading changes. You stop reading to feel superior. You stop reading to win arguments. You stop reading to confirm what you already believe. You start reading to be challenged. To be unsettled. To notice where you resist. You realize that books don't make you wise. Reflection does. Books don't protect you from deception. Self-awareness does. And suddenly, being fooled is no longer shameful. What's shameful is refusing to learn how you were fooled. So yes, someone can read a lot and still be easily fooled because reading is input, not immunity, because intelligence is not awareness. Because knowledge without humility sharpens ego, not judgment. The goal was never to read more. The goal was to see clearer. And clarity doesn't come from how much you know, it comes from how carefully you question yourself while knowing it. So the next time you feel confident because you've read enough, pause, ask yourself, what am I emotionally invested in believing right now? What conclusion feels too comfortable? What certainty feels suspiciously good? Read, yes, but also slow down. Think, but also observe, learn, but also doubt yourself, because the smartest people are not the ones who never get fooled. They are the ones who notice it quickly and adjust. And the moment you stop using reading as armor and start using it as a mirror is the moment wisdom finally begins.